Hello, BookTube. It's Wednesday, and that means Epic Comic Book Wednesday, the team-up of the titanic forces of stately Vaughan Manor and Hyde Cottage between Michael K. Vaughan's channel and myself. And if you saw his channel today, I'll leave a link to his Wednesday comic video today, you'll see a disturbing split in the usual rhythm. We're not talking about the same book. Instead, he hauled out one of the innumerable boxes that he has at Vaughan Manor that are full of books and graphic novels. I guess Criminale also has endless numbers of boxes of books. Books should not be in boxes. If you have books in boxes, then you have too many books. You should get rid of them until they all can live and breathe on shelves where they belong. But Michael K. Vaughan in this video pulled out a bunch of graphic novels, the graphic novels that time forgot, and just talked about them. And some of you may have wondered, well, what happened to Comic Book Wednesday? Usually we talk about the same thing on Comic Book Wednesday. And it's just a minor miscommunication. That's all. His people and my people miscommunicated about whether or not I was even going to make a video today. So we'll resume Epic Comic Book Wednesday where we share the subject matter next week. But today I thought if he can do the graphic novels that time forgot, then so can I. So I went through a bunch of graphic novels and pulled out a bunch of things that I wanted to show you, much the same as his video. And just to give you an echo of the good old days of Comic Book Wednesdays where we're talking about the same thing, I thought I'd start off with a few that I have that he showed as well in that video. Like, for instance, this, Action Comics number 1000, which was brought out as a square-bound issue by DC Comics. This thing, I think, cost $10, $8. We've got all sorts of familiar artists, all sorts of big and little stories. You've got pinups and whatnot. There's some good original artwork in here, some very interesting stuff. A lot of the stories in here, the individual stories, aren't all that good. But there is, like for instance, here we have a story called An Enemy Within, which has Superman artwork by Curt Swan, the greatest Superman artist of them all. No idea how this was Frankenstein into existence, but it happened. Were these pages out there somewhere? No idea. And there's one other thing in here that I really liked. There's some writing in here that I don't like at all. Tom King, for instance. But Louise Simonson does a story in here that with artwork by Jerry Ordway, another great Superman artist, who, unlike Curt Swan, is still alive. so you could have Jerry Ordway writing Superman every month, or drawing Superman every month if you wanted to. You just don't. And people just don't. They don't call him. Don't know why. Instead, they get incompetence to do it. We also have Jose Luis Garcia Lopez in a story. He is, again, alive and working, a great DC artist who scarcely does any work anymore, although he's fantastic. And this is not the only time that his name is going to come up in this graphic novel that time forgot. Here we have a pinup by Louise Simonson's husband, Walt Simonson, the great Thor artist. Fantastic, foreboding Superman cover. Some really good things in here. The issue is a little bit ruined by the fact that DC uses it not really to celebrate Superman, but to tease the next Brian Michael Bendis Superman storyline about what's his name? Zogel something or other. It's just a bug-eyed monster that hates Kryptonians. And that story, that is the last story in this issue, and it's a cliffhanger. It's just, tune in to Brian Michael Bendis' Superman run to find out what happens. Which, you'd think that the people who put this issue together to celebrate Superman would realize that that's really kind of cheap. But the rest of it, there's some good things in here. So I was happy to be reminded of it in Michael's video. Oh, did I block the bean? Oh, we can't have that. Let's put her over there, and we'll put the comics right up here. Then the next one, I'm sure that Michael and I are going to get to these in detail in due time. But this is Mike Mignola's signature creation, Hellboy. This is Wake the Devil, but like Michael, I have all of these individual volumes of Hellboy, which are Mike Mignola artwork and writing, except for issues that John Byrne wrote. Some of the early issues, Mignola wasn't, his bosses actually weren't happy with him writing. Then they realized he does a fine job, he does a better job than anybody, so they let him do both. And the artwork here is just amazing, just incredible. These are just It's not a whole graphic novel of adventures. Instead, it's individual adventures. And boy, oh boy, are they good. Just, let me give you another. Yeah, there he is. There's Hellboy leaping into action against supernatural beings. These are just great. These old Hellboy graphic novels with the red banner on top are just great. They're fantastic. And then the last thing that I saw that coincides with Michael's is this. This is Marvel Visionaries. This is Frank Miller, Volume 3. Yeah, this is Frank Miller, Volume 3. This is the culmination of the Elektra story. The great Elektra story that really shot Frank Miller to prominence in the comic book world. Really, it did. Only half of this thing is that story, but Elektra runs all throughout these issues, and they are terrific. And the conclusion of the Elektra story, I know that some of you who don't know this story but know Marvel Comics now will say, what do you mean, the conclusion? Elektra is an ongoing comic book character. She's the star of Daredevil's own comic. She's replaced him because she's a woman. That might be true because Marvel owns the rights to her, but that shouldn't be true. Frank Miller thought her up, and he gave her story a stunningly great conclusion in this volume that I won't show you because Michael and I are certainly going to get to it. The conclusion of her story is one of the great comic book panel art sequences ever done by anybody. It's scandalous and reprehensible that Marvel Comics just decided to bring this character back and make her an ordinary superhero. That's just absolutely scandalous. But we'll always have these issues. So then we'll move backwards in time. This is very old. I don't even know if this will have a date in it. This is probably from the 60s or 70s. This is an old DC Comics digest of Tarzan of the Apes. And this was done largely to, I think the timing, if I have the timing right, this was largely done to sort of advertise DC's new launch of Tarzan. DC Comics got the rights to Tarzan and launched it with artwork by Joe Kubert. And that's who did the cover here. That's Tarzan hammerlocking an ape. That wouldn't really work. You'd be advised, if you're ever facing a Gomangani, please don't fight it like that. That leaves the ape's legs, arms, and teeth open to attack you. But the book itself does not have Joe Kubert artwork. Instead, it has Russ Manning artwork. Very different style. Far more Bernie Hogarth-like, far more classical in its lines and its use of shadow. These individual things as well, these informational stuff. But the whole thing is Russ Manning. And talk about the graphic novel that time forgot. What I want is a big Michael K. Vaughan style, 1,000-page, $125 hardcover omnibus of all of this artist on Tarzan. I know that various podunk little fly-by-night third-rate comic book companies have reprinted a lot of this artist's work on Tarzan over the years in hardcover. But I don't want that. I want Disney to buy out whoever's the holdout here. Just have Disney roll in, bury them in money, back up a dump truck full of gold doubloons, buy out the whole thing, and come out with a big omnibus edition, or maybe two. That's what I want. Okay? That's what I want. I want it done big and beautiful and professional. I don't want it coming out as one 30-page hardcover that the comic shop may or may not get because it's a tiny fly-by-night publisher and maybe 2 years later they'll do another one. I want it to come out like clockwork. Like Marvel's Conan omnibus volumes are coming out right now. That's what I want for the Russ Manning Tarzan. That's what I want for Magnus Robot Fighter. That's what I want for a lot. Okay? So get on that. Somebody out there get on that because this thing isn't going to last me much longer. And then this next one is manga. One of the rare instances, there's a whole world of manga out there that I don't know. But long before that world existed in America, long before manga had made the crossover, it had only a tiny trickle. There were only a few examples. And I was turned on to one of those stories by a local comic shop, an LCS proprietor, who was a 60-something French-Canadian woman who just happened to, her son thought it would be a great idea to have a comic shop back when you could have local shops like this. So he set it all up and made all the deals with distributors and whatnot. But because he was a feckless moron, he had no business sense and no use for the shop. Thought, well, Ma, we're going to have to give it up, eh? And she said, you're crazy. We're not giving this up. It's a business. So she started running it. She started running the comic shop, which was downstairs from where they lived. And At first she thought, well, I'll just start running the shop because I'm not going to let a perfectly good business go to waste. You have customers. But then she started reading the comics, all of them. And it was a revelation. She started liking and disliking things. I started having all these in-depth conversations about comics with an old Canuck. It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And she's the one who turned me on to Crying Freeman. Back when manga came out like this in America, you don't see this anymore. And again, a big omnibus of these. This is the story is by Kazuo Koike, and the artwork is by Ryoshi Ikegami. And Ikegami's artwork is amazingly good. Just incredibly detailed. Amazingly good line work. You see, they just wiped out they wiped out the word balloons of what was originally in there and just filled it with the rough equivalent of the English, which is why you have so much extra space in the word balloon that you don't need. Just gorgeous artwork all throughout here. And it stars a character who is known to the Japanese underworld as Crying Freeman, because he was an artist, and then he was abducted by a ruthless underground assassin society who trained him to be a perfect killing machine. And that did work. They tattooed his body front and back. I wonder if we have a really good visual of that. We might not get that until the next issue. He unveils himself, I think, in the next issue. No, we don't ever see these tattoos. He has that on the front and one on the back. Instead, we have this beautiful artwork on the cover. Look at that. Look at how lovely that is. They managed to condition him to be a perfect killer, and he rises in the ranks until he runs that organization. But the one thing that couldn't happen, that they couldn't train out of him, was his artist sensibility. So when he kills someone, he cries. Hence the title. Hence the name. When he kills someone, even when it's a legitimate assassination, he weeps involuntarily. And in this first issue, he is contracted to kill someone, and he is seen by a young woman. A young woman spots him commit the crime. See, it happens right in front of her. And she knows when she sees that he is going to come back to kill her. She knows she's seen a contract killing. And she's okay with that. Curiously okay. She doesn't flee blindly into the night. She instead makes her peace with it. She has just one request of him. When he does indeed return to her, he has one request of him, which is a little bit delicate for this channel. She would like to die a woman. She would like him to take care of that. That's what she wants to tell him when he shows up at her apartment. That's what she wants to tell Mr. Yo. She wants to tell him, to ask that favor of him. That is the very first chapter of this, and it goes on forever. Just forever. The first storyline had, I think, 8 or 9 of these square-bound volumes. Then there was another storyline that had 8 or 9 more cover volumes. At first, the cover was in color, and then the issues were in black and white. I think probably 4 storylines in, or 5, they started being in color. I never did find out whether or not they were ever in color originally in Japan, or whether or not that was an American thing. And sooner or later, I moved away, and that shop is probably long gone. That woman is certainly long dead. Is Crying Freeman still being made? I don't even know that. I have no idea what this artist is doing. I would follow his work. It's so good that I would follow his work. These are extremely violent stories. They're extremely sexually explicit. Extremely so. Extremely gory. But I love them. I thought they were fantastic. This was the only manga things. This and Death Note are the only manga things that I know about. So I found it. I would love a big omnibus of these things. That would be wonderful. Who knows if it exists? But I'd love it. Then we will go back to Mike Mignola. There are names that are going to crop up throughout here. This is Mike Mignola, and the writing here is by Howard Chaykin, which is another name that's going to crop up in these graphic novels that time forgot. This is Iron Wolf. It was brought out by DC. It's got Mike Mignola artwork. This was done before Hellboy. And it is a science fiction space opera, a weirdly neo-colonial future world with alien races. And it's not bright, shiny metal. It's closer to steampunk science fiction, although I don't think that term existed when this came out. When did this come out? Are you going to be able to tell me? 1992, when Jeanette Kahn was still in control of DC Comics. It's terrific. space opera story. I really liked it. I remember when I got it, this was all of $14 when I bought it. I bought it for the artwork. No idea. I had no idea at the time that I was going to come to worship Mike Mignola and I'd never miss a Hellboy thing at all. And then this next is a trilogy. These are in a little rough shape. Again, I would love it if there were an oversized, big hardcover omnibus collecting these things. That would be great. They're worth it. But here we have a couple of recurring names. One is the artist, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, who does great artwork. And the writing is Howard Chaykin. And Howard Chaykin, much like Crying Freeman, is a little bit of an acquired taste. He's a really good comic book artist, I think, really good comic book writer. But he is a little bit of an acquired taste. He is a pretty raw writer. He is fairly openly sexist, a fairly misogynistic comic book writer. I myself think that it is possible with him. His talent is such that it is possible to overlook that and enjoy his comics otherwise. He did, for instance, an update and a revival of The Shadow that is pretty misogynistic, but still wonderfully done. Still wonderfully done, I think. And here, the main psychopathology of Howard Chaykin that's on display in these issues isn't so much misogyny as it is misanthropy. These are bleak comics. These are called Twilight. Let me show you. There's book one. Where you've got, these are square bound things, and they've got full color Jose Luis Garcia Lopez artwork on the inside there. Very detailed, very nice artwork that runs throughout. And then, let's see here. This is volume 2 of Twilight, and then volume 3. And these are stories. They are DC Comics. They take place in... DC Comics has a bunch of storylines that are set in the future, but not 1,000 years in the future. Not the Legion of Superheroes, which is a future storyline of theirs that really caught on. Instead, before then, in between the age of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, but before the Legion, things like Space Cabbie, or the Atomic Knights of the Round Table, or stuff like that, or Space PIs and things like that. And what Chaykin does in these issues is take all of those characters and present them in a real-world future. A very gritty future. He imagines a future in which, what if all of these characters, first of all, shared the same universe, which they don't in the original comics, in Mystery Into Space and Adventure Comics and whatnot. What if they shared the same universe, and what if they were the worst possible iterations of themselves? Louts, maniacs, grifters, that sort of thing. And that's what you get in here, but these issues are wonderful. I know that doesn't sound appetizing, but they are wonderful. And I'm getting a little tired of safeguarding these square-bound volumes when I would much rather have a nice, big collection. So talk about the graphic novels that time forgot. And here, the next one is Marvel. And Marvel has all the money in the world, right? Their movies are worth $10 billion. So why I haven't seen the graphic novel that time forgot that I am going to describe here, I do not know. This was $6.95 when I got it originally. It's one of 4 volumes like this by Stan Lee. This is Bring On the Bad Guys. With a classic John Romita Sr. cover. Just a beautiful cover. Dr. Doom and Dormammu and Mephisto. There's Loki in the background and the Red Skull and the Green Goblin and the Abomination. And what this is Stan Lee narrating reprints that showcase his great villains. The great villains of his era of Marvel Comics. And this is the 3rd book that he did like that. He did a $6.95 volume called Origins of Marvel Comics that I bought and read until it fell apart. God only knows what the original copy of Origins of Marvel Comics costs today on eBay. I don't even want to know. I think I have a copy of that is just not possible to read anymore. It's just falling apart. And that was the original creations that Stan Lee did for Marvel Comics. The Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Thor, that kind of thing, the Hulk. Where you reprint their origin stories and there's commentary. See, there's prose commentary in between. Sometimes a lot, sometimes pages of commentary, other times not much. The commentary is much more extensive in Origins of Marvel Comics and in the sequel, Son of Origins of Marvel Comics, which is more Marvel characters. The Silver Surfer, Iron Man, Nick Fury, the X-Men. Also, with the Origins of Marvel Comics had a great John Romita Sr. cover. Son of Origins had a great John Romita Sr. cover. So did this one. And then there was a 4th one, which was the superhero women, in which Stan Lee brought together the origin stories and the feature stories of some of his most prominent female characters, also with a gorgeous John Romita Sr. cover. I think there were volumes after that, maybe an ill-advised one on super battles or whatnot. But those 4 were great. They have genuine Stan Lee opinionizing about how he created the modern Marvel comic book, and great reprints all across the board. Not necessarily his favorite artists or his favorite issues, just great stuff. And these have only been reprinted with different covers and have never been assembled into a big $125 omnibus hardcover edition that has Origins of Marvel Comics, Son of Origins, Bring on the Bad Guys, and the Superhero Women, with Stan Lee's commentary and all the variant covers. A big thing like that, I cannot possibly be the only Marvel comic book fan who would buy that in a heartbeat. I would buy that volume in a heartbeat, instead of gingerly holding on to these things over the eons. Why hasn't Marvel done that? Why? They're so canny about their reprint culture, and yet they've never done that. But this Bring on the Bad Guys is just wonderful. You have classic operatic John Buscema artwork about the Silver Surfer confronting Mephisto. And you have that, but it goes all the way to there's Gil Kane, his artwork of the Hulk confronting the Abomination, another Gamma Spawn monstrosity just like himself. You have Peter Parker facing off against the Green Goblin. You have Captain America facing off against the Red Skull with Jack Kirby artwork. In a story that gives us the origin of the Red Skull. Who do we have for Thor? The Absorbing Man is for Thor. But also Loki. We get a storyline in which Thor fights the Absorbing Man, but we also get Tales of Asgard that give us the childhood and young boyhood of Loki and how he became evil. Doctor Strange is Dormammu, with Steve Ditko artwork, and we start off with the Fantastic Four, which has the issue in which they encounter Doctor Doom for the first time, but it also has the Jack Kirby Chickstone Doctor Doom story in which we get Doctor Doom's origin story. Just a fantastic volume. And they all are. They're all fantastic. And Stan Lee's commentary is wonderful and heartfelt. It's corny, but it's wonderful and heartfelt. Why don't I have that graphic novel? Why? I do not know. I don't know why I don't have a big volume of Crying Freeman. I don't know why I don't have Twilight in a big volume. I don't know why, like for instance, this next one. Oh my God. We'll go back to Howard Chaykin. I'm a fan of Howard Chaykin. I realize how problematic his writing is, but I'm a fan. I especially love his artwork, and I don't think it ever got any better than this series. This is American Flag from First Comics. I don't know if they exist anymore. I think they got a forlorn shout-out on Michael's video as well. This is the volume Hard Times. There is Reuben Flagg, the requisite female femme fatale, and his talking cat. This takes place in, I forget the exact year. It's coming up. Don't think it's the 2020s. I think it's the 2030s. Dystopian future, corporations running wild. Reuben Flagg he dresses in red, white, and blue, but he's an upright guy. He's the hard-boiled detective, good guy in the midst of all this squalor, and it's great Chaykin artwork. I don't remember if this is the series. Oh yes, it is. Okay, I'm not spoiling anything here. At one point, Reuben Flagg has a grandiloquent enemy who seems to have the upper hand on him, and just offhandedly mentions that you're never going to be able to tell anyone my secret plan because I'm going to beat you to death with my bare hands. I'm going to beat you to death. And Reuben Flagg reacts to that with a mixture of animalistic rage and terror, not so much at the thought of dying, but at the thought of being beaten to death, just so contemptuously. Smacks the guy across the face with a chair and then starts pummeling him while the cat is trying to get his attention. And the cat wants to tell him something very simple. I think the chair got him. It was the chair that killed him. You didn't have to beat on him at all like that. But there were, I think, 4 or 5 Reuben Flagg oversized volumes like this. And as far as I know, they have never been collected. They certainly haven't been collected in a big Michael K. Vaughan style hardcover omnibus, where you could bring them all together, get Howard Chaykin to maybe do something original for that volume, certainly get him to write an introduction, maybe get Michael Moorcock to write, I said, it's Alan Moore. Alan Moore would gladly write an introduction to the series. He loves it as much as I do. He would gladly do that. You make a volume like that, bring all this stuff together, and also clean up the artwork. Just overlay it, clean it up, make it look better, enhance it. Have Howard Chaykin on board for that. That would sell. People would buy that. I don't know why, unless it's that it's copyright hell. Who knows what happened to First Comics? I'm pretty sure they don't exist anymore. Do they own American Flag? Does anybody know who owns American Flag? I guarantee you it's not Howard Chaykin. So who does own this character? Who would have the rights to make a graphic novel out of all this, an omnibus? And who does that person know that a super sexy influencer wants to see that volume? I want to see that volume. I want to see Stan Lee on the origins of Marvel Comics in a big hardcover, a lovingly done hardcover. I want to see Twilight with Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. I want to see all of Crying Freeman. I wouldn't mind a big $150 hardcover that collects all of Mike Mignola's Hellboy. Why hasn't that been done? Anyway, we'll continue here. In fact, we'll finish. You've been through enough. This is a very, very early graphic novel. They used to be this size, and they used to be very rare. Believe it or not, this was a gamble for First and Marvel and DC. They didn't know that comic book fans would buy these things. Stan Lee knew. Stan Lee knew with his origin books. He knew that this would work. Because he always had a way with the market. He always knew what was coming. And he convinced the powers that be, if I make a book, not a comic book, but a book, people will buy it. And they did. But for a long time, this was the size of a graphic novel, and these were not a sure bet at all. And this is one from Marvel Comics, and it's terrific. It's every bit as revisitable now as it was. Oh my God, I'm going to check the copyright, but I'm not going to like what I see. This was a long time ago. 1982. 40 years ago. 40 years ago. It came out. Marvel came out with this, The Death of Captain Marvel, by Jim Starlin. Who you if you're not a comic book fan, you might not know that name, but you will certainly know the name of a character that he created, Thanos. And Thanos is a main character in this book. This is a character. Captain Marvel was a superhero character, totally milquetoast, just a third-rate, utterly derivative, boring comic book character that was created out of a lawsuit. It wasn't created out of any kind of creative urges. He was created so that Marvel could have the rights to the name Captain Marvel, so that DC and Fawcett could not have those rights. And they wanted, their Marvel comics, they wanted to be the people who owned the character called Captain Marvel. That's all. And for a long time, when Gene Colan was drawing the book, that Captain Marvel was as boring as dirt. But then Jim Starlin got a hold of the character and started weaving a whole mythos, a cosmic hero mythos with Captain Marvel and Gamora and Pip the Troll and Adam Warlock, especially Adam Warlock, taking all of these older characters and making them cosmic great characters and weaving them together. And the villain of the piece was Thanos, the Mad Titan. But Thanos is only the villain in this book. He's dead. In this book, Thanos is long gone. He's not the villain in this. The death of Captain Marvel is caused by cancer. I just couldn't believe it when I saw. Let me show you. Let me show you the panel that just blew me away when I saw it the first time. Captain Marvel and a couple of other characters, Mentor and Star Fox. Star Fox will be appearing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't think Mentor is ever going to make an appearance. Marvel Cinematic Universe doesn't seem to have much patience with characters like Odin or Mentor. Although, I think Russell Crowe is Zeus in the new Thor movie. We shall see. If he doesn't die at the end of the movie, that'll be a break with tradition. But Captain Marvel and Mentor and Star Fox are fighting some of Thanos' old goons at one of Thanos' old strongholds. It's a great action sequence. They're just, they're fighting away. Jim Starlin was really good at this sort of thing. And when the fighting sequence is over, Captain Marvel starts coughing, and he can't stop. He starts coughing, and he can't stop. And it has nothing to do with the villains. As Star Fox says, I didn't see anyone lay a hand on him during the battle. And Mentor says, I don't think anyone did. And no one did. Instead, he has cancer. It stems from an actual issue of Captain Marvel Comics, which I read, in which he fights a character named Nitro and has to deal directly with radioactive material. It gave him cancer. And slowly, you're reading this thing. It's just beautiful, Jim Starlin artwork. Just beautiful. You're reading this book. As experts from Earth, we recall all of Captain Marvel's great adventures. And as experts from Earth are arriving, you keep expecting a MacGuffin, right? The heroes, the Avengers, are going to show up, and all sorts of other heroes are going to show up. And sooner or later, someone's going to figure out a way to save him. Even though he's getting weaker and thinner, and they can't do it. And eventually, they accept that. This is all happening in the comic. I remember reading this. I bought this when it came out. It was very expensive. It was $6. A lot of money back then. I bought it, and I just kept expecting. We're this far along. I kept expecting the ending to what you would expect from a comic book, and instead, it doesn't happen. The heroes can't figure out how to save him. They can't figure out how to reverse his cancer or magically recreate him or anything like that. And sooner or later, people start arriving. This is taking place on the Saturn moon Titan. People start arriving. Not to save Captain Marvel, but to say goodbye to Captain Marvel. I know that I quibbled at the same. I read this in '82, and I had the same quibble. Silver Surfer can't leave the Earth. So what's he doing there? But I had the same quibble. But the characters say, well, there's no luck. We can't find a cure. This is only a matter of time. He's wasting away, but there isn't going to be a miracle cure. There's a great moment. Comic book fans have just loved this moment where a Skrull shows up to pay his respects to Captain Marvel. The Skrull and Captain Marvel's people, the Kree, have been lifelong enemies. Captain Marvel has fought the Skrull many, many times. But in this case, the general just wants to salute. Captain Marvel, I greet you in the name of the Imperial Skrull Empire. I'm here not because you are our enemy, but because you've always been our greatest enemy. No being in the entire galaxy has ever faced our armed might so bravely or thwarted our plans as many times as you have. You are quite possibly the greatest warrior who has ever walked the stars. We Skrulls are a martial race and have long respected your skills, deeds, and courage, even though you are our foe. That is why I have come by order of the Imperial Council to present you with this, the Royal Skrull Medal of Valor. I salute you, Captain. May your passing be swift and your afterlife reward great. No one had ever seen anything like this in a comic book before. No one had. This is the moment when the Skrull would have blasted him with an energy beam, which would have cured him and thrown him into an alternate dimension or something like that. Instead, it's just a tribute. And then he falls into a coma. And there's nothing anyone can do about it. And at the very end of this comic book, at the very end, I thought, all right, this is the MacGuffin that you're going to pull out at the end, because Thanos returns. That's his frozen statue. I've shown you the comic book in which that happened. We will be going over that comic book again many times. Suddenly we see him move. He steps off this pedestal and he's alive again. And he comes to Captain Marvel's bedside. Blows apart the door. And suddenly Captain Marvel is whole again. He leaps out of bed, ready to fight Thanos as he has and he always will. They fight. In this climax, he's not just fighting Thanos; he's fighting all of his old enemies. He's in top form again, but it's not real. It's not real. It's in his mind. He will keep fighting, but really, it's death that's come to claim him, and death does. This is the death of Captain Marvel. There he is. There is his grave spot on Titan. Surrounded by comic book characters, including, I don't know if you can make them out back there, that spit curl belongs to Superman. And that's it. And that is the comic, The Death of Captain Marvel. Now, I don't know how many times this has been reprinted, but I have never certainly seen a big, nice hardcover of this, and I have no idea why that is. Is it because of Jim Starlin? Is Jim Starlin maybe getting a little litigious in his old age? I have no idea. I still have the original copy that I got at the dry goods store. But I would like a big volume that had, a big hardcover volume that had all of Jim Starlin's cosmic hero work, all of his stuff on Warlock, all of his stuff on Captain Marvel, and concluding with this, and with the two issue annual story in which Thanos turns to stone, which we've seen on this channel before. It's tremendous. We'll see it again. But that graphic novel doesn't exist. Talk about the graphic novels that time forgot. Marvel has, this is universally regarded as a classic story. Where is the love for this story in current Marvel? I have no idea. But anyway, that is it for me. That has gone on a bit long, but that is the graphic novels that time forgot. As you can see, there's a lot of room left for reprint culture. And considering the state of current comics in Marvel and DC, the current floppies that are out every week, I think their future lies in reprint culture. So they really ought to get on the stick about all this stuff and simply buy out these podunk company holdouts that aren't reprinting this stuff correctly. But anyway, that's enough opinionizing from me. I will wrap this up, and we will be back next week together talking about the same moped. I mean, the same comic book next week. So I'll see you then, all two of you. Thank you, BookTube.